Example of saying, put your name on it, lean into it, take the risk. You may not know how you're going to get there, but work it along the way. And this Gold COE, for example, has people from commercial, services, engineering, research, sort of not really organized on any org chart, but that's all they work on. Until the point that there's something more important to work on. That's a huge shift for us. We do a leadership meeting every year. Jeff hosts in Florida. It's like, whatever, the top 400 or 500 people in the company go there. Typically, we get a speaker like, we've had Hillary Clinton there, we've had Henry Kissinger there, and all of that. In 2011 or 2012, when we were starting this transformation, we had 5 30-year-olds in jeans from Silicon Valley that talked to us about how they build companies. So I think there's this just mindset and cultural change that sort of the people that are in the company and that have been in the company for a while on the industrial side or the financial side, I think we're trying to grow a new digital muscle and a new muscle that says smart risk, how can you lean into stuff? You never want to design a jet engine and just experiment with it, but there's a lot of other things you can do that with.
3 very important takeaways, right? When you talk about change and making it real, and how you can slay the 3 dragons that I spoke of. I think you're slaying them in many ways. One is through empowerment. Because through empowerment, when you say you're in charge, then those 3 dragons, fear, doubt, and worry, you're in charge. So you can actually slay the 3 dragons yourself. Because you're giving them that power, which they believe they don't have in a change transformation journey. 2, mindset, right? So when you talk about your mindset, in a way you're influencing their mindset to say, it's all right to make mistakes, it's all right to experiment, it's a bold bet, take calculated risks. This is all your thinking, right? How you think about the business and therefore your behavior is impacted through the way you think about the world and your business. 3, leadership. Very interestingly, you're saying you've done away with the hierarchy to the extent possible. And people exist in their functions, in their roles for the simple purpose of coming together and solving business problems or delivering business outcomes. And that's how you look at your organization. So if you look at change, you've impacted belief systems. You've impacted leadership, the way they come together and respond to that. You've impacted behavior by teaming and bringing people together. Of course, you're impacting performance as well. I'm going to move on to my next section, which is making it stick. So we've done making it known, making it real, and we're going to talk about making it stick, which is all about structure, systems, processes. Have they undergone a change? The one that I love is performance management. Okay? G gave us the bell curve, they took it away as well. So here's an opportunity, Ravi. What are the system changes in relationship to people that you have undertaken to mirror this change that you're creating on the business side?
Right. So we talked about taking risks. We talked about being collaborative in how we approach the customers, right? We talked about constantly learning. So when you look at this, and then you also look at the new workforce generation coming into the workforce, where it is really not the hierarchy, but it's the expertise and impact that evinces respect. We have to revisit the way we do our performance management system, right? So we have done a few things, and by the way, it's a journey. And the best thing for us in human resources is the way we have approached performance development at GE, as we call it, is actually through the FastWorks methodology. So we tried a minimal viable product, we tried a couple of options, we changed it, and I'll walk you through that journey, right? But what has changed, right? So, Nisha, because you talked about bell shape, I want to start with that and say, yes, I think we didn't invent it, but the way it was managed, we probably we adhered to it quite strictly. But that is really I am in GE since 2001. Probably in my first couple of years, we really did it. And we used to call it rating and ranking, right? So rating was your absolute performance, ranking was relatively how you did with respect to the others. That really leads to bell-shaped curve. By 2005, we had stopped doing ranking. So while the rest of the world believed we continued it, actually we've been on a journey for a while now. We stopped doing that. That was the first one. By the way, this performance management system we had is dating back to 1970s. Right? So we had to change. So our conversation with managers, leaders, and employees on how do you think this is going led us to revisit this in the context of what's happening in the company. So what we have today is we made it very simple. So what does simple mean? It is based on an app. It is no longer a 200, 300 word document, right? We made it much more democratic. We have made it much more social. So the way it is done today is we talk about priorities. We do not talk about goals and objectives. Because the day you sign up for a job, the day I signed up for a job to work in human resources, more or less my goals and objectives are known, right? Between my goals and objectives and my counterparts in China, given our specific situation, maybe the metrics are a little different, the area of focus is a little different. You can take this to a salesperson. Salesperson north and south, what does a salesperson do? Something very similar, right? But in the north, maybe someone has to strengthen distribution network. In the south, maybe someone has to acquire more customers. So there's a variation. Therefore, we talk about priorities. And what we encourage employees to do is choose 2 or 3 priorities which will really help them make a much bigger impact on their job. It doesn't mean they don't do the rest. They will do the rest, but these 2 or 3 are the ones that they'll really focus on. So they have a dialogue with their manager on priorities. We don't do this on an annual basis anymore. What we've told employees and managers is, based on the role, based on the external circumstance, what happens, you can keep it live through the year. You can change it. Some people do it toll gate based, some people do it calendar. Second, the employee and the manager can have ongoing conversations around it, and we use the word touch point for it. Any dialogue between the manager and employee is a touch point, and either of them can record it. Right? Then any feedback. Now, we stopped using the word feedback, we use the word insights, because neuro-linguistic experts say the use of language makes a difference on how it is received. So there's a lot more receptiveness and openness to the word insight. So we talk about insights. And we talk about insights as a continue insight, something someone is doing, we want him or her to do more of. We talk about a consider insight, something we want to consider for change. Now, anybody, as an employee, my manager could give me insights. I can give my manager insights, but that's the whole bit of democratizing the whole process. About being much more leveraging the entire social network, we allow employees to seek insights from anybody in the organization. Now, I can initiate and ask 10 colleagues, give me insight, or I can give an insight to Munish unsolicited. The difference is, it is not anonymous. Munish will see my wonderful photo and my wonderful comment. It's not anonymous, because we want to build this culture of trust. More importantly, we want to build this culture where we actually invest in each other. So when Munish and I work, right, we may not necessarily come in the same organization chart, hierarchically we may not be related, etc. Why would I give Munish insight? I would give only if I care about Munish. One, Munish as a colleague. Second, Munish as how he's contributing to what we are working towards, right? So this actually is the biggest shift for us. We are trying to make it personal in the office, right? It has to matter to us who we work with, how much we want to invest in them. Just think back about it. You would not give insight to somebody that you really are not invested in. That is the change that we are trying to drive. And finally, this goes through the year, and at the end of the year, the manager and the employee have a summary discussion. Now, at the end of the summary discussion, it is not like we had in the past, employee submits, manager reviews and approves. Employee and manager discuss it, the manager submits it, the matter is finished. We have moved away from an annual performance rating, right? We do talk about impact with the employee through the year, but we moved away from an annual rating, which had kind of become a little bit of labeling. Now, I talked about FastWorks and how did we do it. We launched this in 2014. 5,000 employees worldwide did it. HR was the first function to do it because we said we should be our own guinea pigs first. In 2015, about 50,000 employees did this. And when 50,000 employees did it, half of them, that is different businesses, right? 50% of the employees had an impact rating at the end of the year. 50% of them did not have an impact rating at the end of the year. So we went back to these employees and managers and asked them, how was the experience? What are things that went well? Where should we persevere? Where should we pivot? What should we kill? So based on that, this year, the entire 300,000 employees of GE, 300,000, we have about 140 who are workmen, the balance 160, the professional band employees, we are on this new performance development at GE.
Super.
And the last comment I want to make here is, what has made it, I think, stick is we made it very simple and easy. Meaning, it's an app, it's a it was created by GE, it's on the Apple phone today. And these are just phrases, sentences. These are not long, elaborate paragraphs that are written anymore. So, at the end of the meeting, one of my colleagues can just send me like a tweet, few quick sentences, Ravi, you should consider this, Ravi, you should continue this. It makes it much more current. It gives the employee an opportunity to work on it through the year. So this is what we are trying to do.
So I heard a couple of things just to, in the interest of time. Bala's looking at me curiously. So 10 minutes. So I need some question answer time, just to be respectful to the audience. So I heard a couple of things, Ravi, very interesting. The heart of the problem is the problem of the heart, right? In many ways you're addressing that. And company as GE addressing care, trust, aspects that create the stickiness. Because the stickiness comes from the software. The software is aspects such as the ones that you've mentioned. It isn't the sophistication of in this case, the hardware, which is also the software, which is your platform. The second aspect that really comes through in this conversation is when you talk about sustaining momentum, it isn't about an annual cycle. It is about seeing into the future, which is where I think you've made that shift in priorities, and priorities won't change year on year, but goals could in that sense. And therefore, you're setting the direction, setting the course, and that's great to hear that a company like GE still has its foundational strength and core beliefs, but is yet so agile in leading the market and setting new standards for everyone else to follow. So with that, by the way, you stole my last question. What creates the stickiness? So I'll go to Munesh and say, if there was one thing that you'd say that creates the stickiness within GE, continue to go on and on and on and succeed and win, what is that one thing that you'd say, Munesh?
I think you've said all the stuff about change before someone makes you, all of that. But I'll tell you why I've been at GE for 15 years. I feel I've worked for 3 or 4 different companies. Because of this transformation, because of sort of the boldness of saying, let's change because it makes sense and let's do it before it sort of happens to us. Even on this particular example of, one might think that, okay, you guys known to build sort of good leaders and all of that, you're going soft, right? You're not rating people. You're not sort of, I tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, what happens when you don't provide a rating to an employee, just imagine as a people leader, your responsibility has gotten magnified by a factor of at least 2. Number 1, the excuse of saying, I really wanted to rate you like that, but they didn't let me. Whether the they is HR or the they is some other peer, that's gone. It's off the table. Which means your conversation with that employee as a people leader, as a manager, suddenly got elevated in terms of its maturity. Suddenly it's not about a label, it's about how can you be better. It's about what we talk about when we talk about performance management, because there is nothing else to talk about. There is no, look back fast to see what my rating is, and then let me talk about the conversation. It's just not there. So the conversation's all about that. Now, do we not differentiate? Absolutely, we differentiate. Probably, in fact, one of the elements of the pilot was to look at, for the cohort that did not have ratings, did it have a difference in differentiation? In, raises, in bonuses, in recognition, in nomination for whatever it is? There was no significant difference between both cohorts. So we still differentiate. Now you might say to a person that, listen, I think you're doing great. I think you walk on water, but the guy gets a small raise. The guy, it's not authentic. And you lose credibility as a people leader when that happens. So automatically, I think it changes the game culturally for us as leaders. And we're starting to see, a year into it now, we're already starting to see some people sort of very uncomfortable with this, and some people embracing it. And that's sort of separating a bit of our own leadership talent on its own.
Great. The reason why Munesh is still at GE is because there is change. Clearly,
Yeah.
you seem to have worked in 4 different companies, which itself is symbolic of the excitement that change brings with it. With that, question answers, please introduce yourself. Keep your question limited to 30 seconds. And if there's a specific person you'd like to ask, please name that person. I see a person here, and then I'll come to you. And please use a mic. So can we have a mic there, please? It's also a test of our efficiency. Anyone to help with the mic?
Where do you see the...
Is there somebody to help with the mic, please? Yeah, it's just getting to you. Would you like to shout?
No.
Oh, okay. No.
Oh, here's a mic.
Morning, I'm Sonal from Titan.
You'll have to speak up.
I'm Sonal from Titan. Ravi, this question is for you, where you spoke about defining priorities instead of goals.
I'm
as
sorry, I
part-
can't hear you.
Defining priorities instead of goals.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my question is, each individual would define his or her priorities as a part of a function which would have its own priorities. How does HR safeguard itself from falling prey to, say, servicing the business in terms of taking up priorities which the business dictates, instead of focusing on the larger objective? How do you strike that balance?
So this is for human resource in particular or generally?
It's for HR in particular, but also a general perspective would help. So I'm sure in terms of the business having that understanding that this is not something which you work on lightly, or which it's not something which you change at a whim. How do you manage to strike that balance with this kind of a...
Sure. So let me talk about how we do for our function, and then I'll make a general comment to the others. So look, there are certain things that are happening in the organization, right? Because we have 9 different businesses in GE, right? There is a tie back to your business also, while there's a tie to the larger corporation. So the way we do our priorities, it's a bottoms up and a top down. There are certain things which are common for GE or common for a particular business. They always remain a part of the priorities that we drive. So PD and culture change that we are doing is a huge part of what human resources focused on. There are some businesses, for example, who are doing acquisitions. So, merger and acquisition. So integration becomes an important part for that particular business, right? So what we do is we as a team get together, talk about our different business priorities and what we want to do as a region. And in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I think, I sent out a note on behalf of the region HR team, Munesh and the rest of the leadership team, to say, hey, we met as an HR team. These are a few things that we want to drive together. Does it resonate with you? We get feedback from them, and then we put it on. And these are things that we will drive together as a team. In addition, right, I have my colleague Asmita sitting here. She supports the technology organization in healthcare. She'll make sure she also has a discussion with the technology leader. And does a few things that support him or her. So it is a combination. Finally, it is really the role of the immediate leader to help every employee. Now this is broader, right? I think one of the big important roles of a leader is to connect the context of what the employee is doing and what the organization is doing. So those dialogues really help us to set priorities. Now, does it go perfectly well? I think it goes as well as the leaders do it, right? And we do a lot of investment in trying to help our leaders. And we have people on the spectrum. Some people do it fabulously well. Some people are learning. Some people probably struggle with it. And that becomes a challenge for the HR team. How do we enable our leaders better?
You know, the danger with a GE session is it can go on because there's such a wealth of knowledge. So we'll take 2 final questions. There. Get a mic there, please, and then I'm going to come to you. You're the final question. Vipul, I'm not going to come to you because you can have a side chat with Ravi and Munesh later.
Hi, I'm Gitanjali. I head HR for NL Green Power, and I'm a proud GE alumnus. I think it's really refreshing to hear that a company that was traditionally so aggressive on individual performance, rating and ranking employees, and at one time following the bell curve strictly, is now making things easy and simple, being more democratic and more social with the whole performance management system. But yet is able to differentiate performance at the end of the year or at various periods of time. I'd like to know what tools are you using to still be able to differentiate employee performance?
What tool or?
Are you skilling your manager?
What tool are you using or what
Yes,
role?
what tools? What
What
tools are
tools?
you using?
Are you using any
differentiate.
tools to help differentiate performance?
I think differentiation, I don't know, even when we were doing the bell curve, differentiation, you could pretend it came from a tool or a 9 blocker, but it really came from people understanding what a person's doing and how they're doing it. Are they achieving their objectives, and then how are they achieving them? And both are important. That toolkit fundamentally does not change.
Are you still using the 9 box?
No, we're not.
You're not.
But all I'm saying is priorities become the what, and the culture and the belief system becomes the how.
Has the belief system remained intact?
The
or-
belief system's actually transformed completely.
Completely?
Yes.
Okay.
So the 5 beliefs that we operate GE on today are quite different and quite action-oriented compared to sort of the values that we talked about, which were, so the values were things like external focus and, inclusiveness.
Give me an example
The
of a
belief
belief.
system is customers determine our success, deliver results in an uncertain world, empower and inspire to win. So it's an action-oriented belief system that sort of anchors behaviorally what you would expect to see in people. And there's only 5. And so I think that framework of evaluation and differentiation, while we may say there's no bell curve and no 9 block, is actually sort of even clearer and simpler. So if you're a leader or a manager that sort of gets that, coaches with that sort of backdrop, I think it's not that hard to both differentiate and also have an open dialogue with people about what can they continue and what can they consider doing differently.
Thanks. Raj, do I have permission for another question, or should we call it a day? One question is fine. I've got the permission, so I'll come to you as promised. Get yourself a mic, please. Ma'am, not you. Here. Apologies.
Thank you, sir. My name is Amar. I'm from.
No, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, great. I am Amar. I'm coming from a brand called Rouge. I have just only one question, sir. Last month, HBR, there was an article published on performance management, right? The concluding statement, what it says is, we are not still ready to give up the annual ratings. I just want your comment on that.
I think you're referring to an article that was written by somebody from Facebook, right? That was the HBR article, I think.
Yeah.
Even I read that. I cannot comment on that. I can tell you what we are doing in our organization, right?
All right.
So we believed that it is time for us to revisit our performance management system. The way we go about doing it, the tools that we use, what's the end result that we are trying to drive. So I think change happens in a broader context of what your organization is going through. And we shared with you some of the change that we are going through as an organization, as a portfolio, as our business strategy. Given all this, we felt it's time for us to change. So we are doing the change, and I think it is the truth for every organization. I don't believe you can pick up something from an organization and drop it and then make sure it works. It works in a larger ecosystem. We felt it is time for us to change. We are experimenting. We are learning every time, and we are making change. I don't think we are not saying this is the end game. All our employees will go through the process. I'm sure we'll be learning some things and we'll be making a few changes, but we felt it was time to embark on the journey, and we have.
Thank you, sir.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Munesh and Ravi. Very insightful, as good as insights that you now refer to in your performance management system. Thank you all for being a wonderful audience and showing up early morning. We thought we'll have only the first row. We've got many more rows filled up now. In the end, I'd just like to say that creating a competitive advantage and maintaining and sustaining momentum is about making it known, making it real, and making it stick. With that, thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
And Nishjay, that's the power of GE and you together. Just stay there for just a second. I kind of liked. No, take a picture, stand, dance, all are good. I liked, the insights versus feedback comment that Ravi made, and I think that was really powerful. People don't like the word feedback. My son, keeps telling my wife, "Don't give me feedback, Mom. My school teacher always gives." So that was a good one. And from you, co-creating with the customer, took me back to GE. But obviously, a lot of words are different. You're not using several words that I used to hear 6 years ago. Very, very well moderated, Nishchay. Obviously, you have done a lot of prep for coming into this one. Before we let these wonderful people go, I'd like to invite Sudhish up on the stage. Sudhish is the Chief People Officer of Azim Premji Foundation. Up on the stage to please hand over some mementos to them. And as Sudhish comes up, if we can also have the page up there, please come. We'd like to thank, Nishchay, Ravi, and Munesh. And on your behalf, the three of you will be contributing to the education of this little boy that you see on the screen at the back. So thank you so much for enabling both the discussion and the boy up there. Thanks. Again, give a big hand to all the three of them and Sudhish.